Our hero is in a fight for his life against a mysterious woman who controls ice. This is the Frost Empress, and she looks down on the protagonist with an air of superiority. But the knight isn't intimidated and cracks a huge grin, showing he's loving the adrenaline rush. So he charges at his enemy with everything he's got, fearless of what might happen. Then, the two of them clash in an explosion of power that shakes the entire ice cave. With that, the warrior manages to knock his adversary down, getting on top of her, ready to end the fight. He narrates that he got hooked on the thrill of fighting extremely dangerous monsters. The white-haired woman doesn't give up and prepares a powerful magical attack. The queen launches several ice spikes, and he says he was hooked on clearing tough dungeons. The opponent's blow is so strong that the young man is badly hurt and reels from the impact. Just when the fight was getting fun, he's struck by the Empress's curse. In that moment, the young man thinks this is the end for him and that he's lived his whole life the wrong way. A memory comes to mind of a friend who was worried about his injuries. But in the past, he would just smile, saying it was nothing and that he wanted more challenges. Now, facing the end, he regrets it and realizes he was crazy for taking so many risks. In his final moments, he apologizes to his family and says his goodbyes. When it all seemed to be over, the young man sees a strange light and is confused. He suddenly wakes up, staring at the ceiling and wondering where he is. Looking at his reflection in the mirror, he sees his younger self and remembers he was defeated by the Empress. The hero realizes he's returned to the past and smiles, because he has a new chance to prepare. He remembers that with all his experience as the Sword King, he has a huge advantage. Because of this, the young man knows he can become even stronger than before with all this knowledge. But he quickly changes his mind and decides he won't make the same mistakes again. The young man no longer wants that crazy life of fighting, and besides, he doesn't want to get any stronger. Then he clenches his fist, determined not to recklessly pursue power again. The scene changes to a drunk friend yelling at him about how he's wasting his life. His buddy complains that he only streams bad games to barely anyone, and that it's not a real job. Despite the yelling, the protagonist just sips his drink calmly, ignoring his friend's lecture. The date reads May 7th, 2022, showing the exact moment in time. Then he finishes his drink and gets up as his friend asks where he's going. With a smile on his face, the young man replies that he's going to stream bad games, as usual. Arriving home, the young man sits down in front of his computer to start the stream. His eyes are completely focused on the screen, showing his determination for what he's about to do. The screen reveals that he's only 2 hours away from completing 50,000 hours of streaming. Today's game is Valendorade, and he gets ready to begin his final and most important stream. He explains that he usually plays old titles like Dark Hill, which hardly anyone plays anymore. A viewer joins the stream and comments that he finally hit 1 million in annual income. The streamer thinks that this weird guy always shows up whenever his income goes up a little. The viewer asks if he's giving up, and the young man announces that this will be his final stream. Then he reveals that he streamed for 7 years to become a first Wave Awakened streamer. Suddenly, a blue screen appears, announcing that the Northland server and the Earth beta are now online. 2,780. 3 days have passed since he returned, and now everyone is seeing the screens. These same status windows appeared for every human being, and the world changed completely. The guy reflects that with his experience, it's best to stay in third place, so he doesn't lose his mind again trying to be number one. Just then, the system announces that he's met the conditions and will receive the streamer class and the first Wave Awakening. A bonus for being the first one in the game Dark Hill allows him to use characters as awakening material. Suddenly, he's shocked to see that his inventory and in-game abilities are also being displayed. A moment later, the young man earns an achievement for consistently streaming to a small audience and is left confused. The achievement explains that since he met the requirements, he can now merge his in-game character's abilities. With a sly grin, he realizes he can use everything from his character as material and thinks this bonus is incredible. But he quickly calms down since the streamer class isn't for combat and has a level cap. so it shouldn't be that powerful. The boy decides to merge everything, and the system grants him the all-purpose streamer class with new traits. He then plops down in his chair, thinking that he's become a side character, which is perfect for a quiet life. Then, the system connects him to a streaming channel, where the server is planet Earth itself. His hand begins to glow, and he realizes he's in Tokyo, and that the world has turned into one giant game server. 1 week has passed, and the first awakened people have begun to fight the monsters that have appeared. These new heroes became famous for taking down the creatures that appeared all over the planet. A companion tells the redhead to fall back and heal up while he holds off the beasts, and the guy thanks him. At that moment, our hero approaches. The adventurers spot a giant rabbit and warn him about the danger. The protagonist calmly walks over and says they aren't that tough and can be taken down in a single blow. He then activates his streamer vision, and the display shows that it's a level 3 rabbit with a kicking skill. The guy is surprised he can see the monster's skills, and the creature stares at him menacingly. The creature lunges at one of the adventurers, who calmly blocks as a girl prepares to attack. The young woman charges the giant rabbit, and the protagonist comments that she just hit level 4. With that, he compliments the adventurer's instincts for retreating at the last second and attacking in the opening. But the guy thinks the attack would have been more effective from a shorter distance. Then the giant rabbit leaps in his direction, and he says he'll show them that weak spot he mentioned. The young man smiles. The creature was starting to annoy him, and this was the perfect time to act. In that moment, he readies himself for battle and quickly pulls out a small dagger he had concealed. As the beast leaped to attack, the streamer was already poised for combat with 2 daggers in his hands. Gripping his weapon firmly, he prepares to deliver a decisive blow to the creature. With a swift movement, he lands a direct hit on the creature's head, its vital spot. The system promptly informs him that he has defeated the monster and reached level 10, but the guy just finds it all boring. He then remembers that peace comes first, telling himself not to go down the wrong path again. A notification announces that the viewer count is available, and the young man decides to see how many people were watching. He notices his numbers are the same as Egan Paul's and wonders why. Because of this, the young man gets confused since he doesn't understand the reason for having the same stats. But he soon thinks this isn't so bad and that he could even aim for first place. The young man quickly scolds himself for having those thoughts and decides to focus again. With that, he decides he needs to train his mindset so he doesn't stray from his goal. Meanwhile, on a forum, someone comments about seeing a streamer defeat a giant rabbit with a single blow. Another user says he was crazy and was even observing the monsters from up close. The debate continues with people talking about his transmission barrier and whether he was a regressor. At that moment, the system informs him that the young man has reached the top and is now at level 15. With that, he finally enters the official awakening room for the next stage of his journey. Facing the winged figure, the boy says he has already chosen his player name and doesn't need more time. Then, he reveals that his awakened name will be Yamada Taro. The entity confirms the name and asks if he wants his information public on the rankings, but he refuses. The protagonist takes on a serious and determined expression after making his decision. He thinks to himself that he's back and that having a generic name with private information is the best choice. This way, the young man believes he won't have any problems and decides to check the rankings. Upon opening the screen, he sees various types of classes like swordsman, healer, and archer. First place in the swordsman category is Takahashi Kento, who is at level 15. The boy is surprised to see that first place is at the same level as him and recognizes the name. He wonders if streamers level up faster and concludes that he needs to go a bit slower. 4 days pass, and the young man is already at level 20, which surprises him with his speed. With this, the system enables interaction with viewers and donations, but he finds it unnecessary. So, to celebrate his new level, the young man decides to enter the tutorial field to test his skills. The location is a massive station with a glowing dome during the night. The system confirms it is Tokyo Central Station, and the boy plans to get a revival book. He enters the tutorial field, stating it's not for power but for safety. As soon as he arrives, the streamer notices that some players have already been defeated there. Unfortunately for them, level 15 goblins defeated them, and the young man sees the fallen players on the ground. At that moment, he prepares to analyze the situation and understand what is happening. He quickly identifies the monsters as goblins and realizes their vision is quite poor. The young man observes other players fighting and thinks their skills are quite weak. With his explanation ready, he decides it's time to start the actual broadcast for his viewers. One of the players screams while attacking one of the monsters with his spear, drawing a lot of attention. The protagonist then warns them to be quiet because the enemy is sensitive to sound. Following the advice, the players attack in silence and manage to hit one of the goblins. Shortly after, another monster is defeated with a quick and precise attack from the adventurers. With the battle won, the players celebrate a victory that seemed impossible before. The three young men who were saved are very grateful to the protagonist for his valuable help. They ask what their savior's class is and are shocked to learn that he is a streamer. And when they ask how he knew about the sound, the young man says he found out just by observing the goblins. He reveals that he used his broadcaster's eye skill to analyze the situation with precision. Using his vision, he discovers that the boys are from a gaming club and don't have skills yet. The protagonist smiles seeing the group of friends and thinks about how youth is a great phase. He notices that the 9 of them together get a bonus and decides to give the students more advice. Then, the young man instructs the boy on the end to shout to draw the enemy's attention to him. Next, he tells the one in the center to take a step forward because he was too far back. Following the orders, the young men defeat a monster that drops an item, leaving everyone excited. One of them asks if the guy is really a streamer, and he confirms he is live at that very moment. The group leader is very happy and comments that his advice made everything much easier. With that, the students are very grateful to the streamer, who finds their gratitude a bit exaggerated. They beg him to keep watching and teaching them, even promising to share the items. The whole group gathers around the young man with great excitement, but he seems a bit awkward. Suddenly, our protagonist's expression changes as he senses a strong aggressive intent nearby. An attacker appears at level 15 with a bonus and the achievement of having eliminated 9 people. The streamer gives a slight smile because it seems the situation has finally gotten more interesting. At that moment, the attacker rushes forward with a dagger to try and quickly end the young man, but the protagonist stops the attack easily, catching the aggressor's wrist in mid-air with one hand. He immobilizes the enemy, who is shocked to have been neutralized so simply. Our hero then comments that short swords are actually the easiest to handle. Holding the guy, he asks in a threatening way where he should strike him, leaving the other in a panic. The attacker's dagger glows with a purple and very intimidating aura in the middle of the darkness. The enemy begs for his life, but the protagonist smiles and decides the neck is the best spot. Without hesitation, the streamer strikes the opponent with a quick and precise blow to end the fight. With that, the attacker falls to the ground, completely defeated, and with no chance to fight back. The young man lets out a sigh and comments that it's been a while since he dealt with an assassin. He then analyzes the body and says the guy probably wanted the 10 elimination achievement. The achievement for 9 victims gave him a 2-level bonus, making him stronger than normal. The protagonist explains that his plan was to take the 10th victim and then finish off the students. But the attacker's big mistake was choosing the streamer as his first target in the chaos. That said, he approaches to take the enemy's weapon as a trophy from that battle. A bit of the opponent's red liquid splashes on him, but the young man doesn't mind at all. He thinks that the guy still has a chance to return since he is in the tutorial field. Turning to the group, the hero asks if everyone is okay after that big scare. The students confirm they are fine, despite still being a bit shaken by the situation. The young man finds it funny how polite kids are these days, even in danger. Observing the fight, he notices that everyone is getting used to fighting the goblins. The students' attacks become more coordinated, and they take down the monsters with ease. One of them finishes off a goblin, and it's clear that everyone's levels have also gone up significantly. To better understand the situation, the streamer decides to use his broadcaster's eye skill again. He finds the skill very useful and says he will interview whoever returns at midnight for his live stream. At that, everyone is in shock upon realizing that the players actually returned after being defeated in the tutorial. With this, the crowd starts celebrating a lot, because this genuine reaction from the survivors is what the audience likes to see. At that moment, the protagonist smiles mischievously because he knows he managed to record great content for his next video. Then, he approaches one of the young men and asks what it's like to have been defeated, while he continues recording everything for the stream. But suddenly, a girl appears with a totally bizarre and terrifying look, focusing on her target with a lot of anger in her eyes. With a roar of fury, she charges with her dagger covered in purple energy, wanting to take down the streamer no matter what. Even with the attack coming his way, the young man stays calm because his transmission barrier protects him from all damage. Because of the impact against the magical protection, the aggressor ends up being thrown back with great force and falls to the ground. He then warns her that since she tried to attack again, she will have to be eliminated once more to learn her lesson for good. At that instant, the hero calmly leans down to pick up the weapon that fell on the ground during that quick and tense confrontation. Holding the blade, the young man comments that he didn't want to do that but states he had no other choice in the current situation. Then, the young man ends his broadcast, thanking everyone who watched and saying goodbye with a very cynical smile on his face. Thoughtfully, he believes that everything ended safely since he eliminated only one ill-intentioned person along the way. Now we meet the famous Egan Paul, who is an American content creator, very well known by all players in the world. Besides his fame, he is also one of the best players in the world ranking of the famous virtual reality game called Olden. This blonde man was one of the first human beings to easily adapt to the bizarre changes that recently occurred in the world. Using all his knowledge, he rose to level 15 at an absurd speed and secured his place at the top of the ranking. While talking to his big friend, the blonde man asks for a little help organizing his next video broadcasts. When asked about his audience, the foreigner calmly replies that he has about 1,500 viewers at the moment. The friend is shocked by the number because the young man has 20 million subscribers and is focusing on something very small. The blonde man says he needs to prepare for the future and that if he keeps going the old way, he will end up falling behind. He explains that there is a limit on people watching and that this number seems to be defined by the player's level. With that, his colleague mentions he saw a guy on the internet who managed to reach the mark of 3,000 online viewers. Then, the foreigner reveals with a smile that that guy was actually him and that his fame allows him to double his stream's reach. 3 days later, the blonde man reaches 6,000 people watching and goes crazy with happiness for being isolated in first place. At that moment, he starts making several partnerships with other top players to consolidate his prominent position. And with that, the young man even hires professional scriptwriters to turn his channel into the most entertaining content of all time. Meanwhile, our protagonist notices that he has also reached 6,000 viewers and wonders if he is now tied with the foreigner. Suddenly, the system announces that a secret hunting mission has been completed and that a new epic objective is being activated. With the message on the screen, a warning appears that the king of monsters has arrived, and the hero gets very excited at the news. The creature is named Gargle, and it is a very powerful level 35 monster that leads all the others in the area. Shortly after, the young man is warned that he will be taken to the boss's field, and that the revival system will not work there. At that moment, a giant magic circle glows on the castle floor, indicating that the great battle is about to truly begin. With that, the streamer warns the group of students that the enemy about to appear is impossible for them to defeat. Using his special skill, the young man analyzes every detail of the environment to figure out how to handle this giant threat. Then, he orders the 9 students to focus only on defense, using their barriers together to withstand at least one direct attack. The young man states with great confidence that after they survive the first blow, he will take care of the rest of the fight himself. At that instant, the enormous monster begins to emerge from the magic portal, while a crushing pressure takes over the entire royal hall. The figure of the Goblin King appears, holding an axe, but the hero is not intimidated and instructs the group to shout very loudly to distract the opponent. As soon as he raises his right hand, he jumps quickly and says he doesn't have time to give detailed explanations about the current plan. Feeling a chill down his spine, the young man opens his special item shop to prepare well for the combat. With that, the young man spends 70,000 diamonds buying a paralysis drug and other rare equipment. Even though he isn't level 30, the streamer believes that fighting the monster won't be a big problem, but the danger is real, and he knows that any slip-up could mean his definitive end in that place. With a bizarre expression, the Goblin King observes the area as he prepares to start the massacre. At that moment, the hero gives the final signal and orders everyone to draw the opponent's attention right now. Then, he gestures frantically for the students to follow his orders without questioning anything at all. One of the young men prepares to shout very loudly, but is abruptly interrupted by a teammate. With that, the young man covers the leader's mouth, stating that something is very strange about the whole situation. He suspects the protagonist wants to use them as live bait, just so he can escape alone. Deciding to ignore the plan, the boys resolve to move in absolute silence to try and escape the danger. Noticing the silence, the warrior realizes that the group doesn't trust him and becomes quite worried about it. At that instant, he bitterly regrets not having explained all the details about the king's behavior. The big problem is that besides sound, this giant creature also reacts to any kind of sudden movement. Because of this, the monster focuses its eyes on the students, who are trying to sneak across the room. Suddenly, the giant leaps with his heavy axe to crush the poor, helpless young men on the floor. With a devastating blow, the beast attacks the group and causes a total defeat for everyone present there. Due to the brutal impact, several boys end up falling to the ground, totally without the strength to keep fighting. Trembling with fear, the survivor looks up and realizes that the real danger is right before his eyes. The student falls to the ground in despair as the giant approaches to deliver the final blow and end everything. At that moment, we see panic taking over the young man, who can't even move from his sheer fear of defeat. With that, the young man closes his eyes and starts to break into a cold sweat, believing that would be his last breath. But suddenly, the protagonist shouts from afar, calling the monster an idiot to draw its full attention. Then, the enormous creature leaps very high, holding its heavy weapon to crush anyone in its path. At that instant, the hero continues yelling to ensure the beast focuses only on him and leaves the other students alone. But the impact of the giant's blow almost hits the boy who was down and makes the ground shake violently. With that, the master of live streams shouts again, reinforcing that the target now should only be him and no one else. At this, the Goblin King's heavy feet touch the ground with absurd force, creating cracks all over the hall. The young man observes the situation with a calculating look and thinks that everything is going much easier than he planned. Then, the adversary leaps again with total fury, wanting to slice the bold one who dared to challenge his royal authority. At that moment, the young man comments that the enemy fell into his trap in a very simple and predictable way. With that, the monster ends up losing its balance and slides across the hall, unable to control its own exaggerated weight. Quickly, the protagonist runs toward the target, taking advantage of the perfect opening he created with his strategy. He stretches out his arm with agility while preparing to use the special item he previously bought from the system shop. With a steady movement, the young man throws the paralysis drug directly into the open mouth of the giant beast. Because of the immediate effect, the Goblin King collapses face first onto the ground and remains totally immobilized by the substance. At that instant, we see the flash of a quick attack. Then, the streamer performs an aerial acrobatics move, demonstrating all his experience in high level technical combat. And finally, the hero lands in style on the opponent's back, showing who truly rules that sacred territory. Observing the monster's back, he notices that strange part seems to be breathing and decides it is the ideal moment to attack. At this, the young man buries his knife with full force right into the beast's sensitive spot, making the red liquid spray everywhere. With that, the young man lets out a smile of satisfaction because he feels his plan is working perfectly during the broadcast. But then, he notices a small movement in the opponent's hand, indicating that the giant hasn't been fully defeated in that room yet. At that moment, the content creator raises his weapon to deliver the final blow and ensure the threat is eliminated once and for all. Quickly, the system confirms the victory over the Goblin King and unlocks the rare achievement called The Little King's Last Moments. Seeing this, the hero, all messy, asks what happened, while the student trembles in fear at the terrifying appearance of his savior. Then, the survivor kneels, begging for forgiveness, but the young man warns that he won't hurt anyone despite having heard the whispers. Calmly, he explains that creature had a cooldown time after each attack, and that's why he told everyone to use the protection barrier. Soon, the student is surprised to discover that there was a delay in the monster's movements, and that everything was part of a precise calculation. But the warrior reveals that during this pause, a mouth-shaped hole appeared on the enemy's back, which was its greatest weak point. With that, he states that his entire plan was focused on hitting exactly that sensitive spot to win the battle easily. In the end, the veteran says he prepared the necessary items and lured the boss close, but admits that, deep down, they were very lucky. Thoughtfully, the boy reflects on the word cluck, while observing the man who seems to know much more than he shows to others. At this, the master of the live stream decides to check his list of achievements to see what new benefits he gained after that intense fight. With that, the title of Tutorial Master is updated to Tutorial Emperor, granting exclusive bonuses to our protagonist. At that moment, the system informs him that the transmission barrier will now stay active permanently while he is in this testing field. Joyfully, he is very happy to have secured first place in the ranking and cannot hide his smile of satisfaction with the result. But the young man realizes that having a constant shield is very good and thinks he should start holding back a bit so as not to draw too much attention. Then, a new notice appears asking the players to head to the escalator to proceed to the next phase of the journey. At this, the boy asks how he can become strong like that, but the hero simply replies that being at this level is something quite common. With that, the young man begs to follow the protagonist on the journey, but the young man turns his back and decides to continue his path alone. At that moment, the students observe the veteran's departure, while the atmosphere between them starts to get very strange and heavy. Then, the young man explains that he is just a streamer and states that the trust between them ended when they ignored his battle orders. With a parting gesture, he wishes the survivors good luck and heads toward the light for the next stage of the challenge. But the group stays behind, regretting the wrong decision, because they realize everything would have been easier if they had obeyed from the start. At this, one of the young men begins to feel a deep anger and questions why the hero didn't help everyone for free. At that instant, a purple and sinister energy begins to wrap around the boy's body, while his friends observe the bizarre change. Then, the colleagues ask what is happening, but the young man doesn't answer and seems to be completely losing his sanity. With his eyes glowing red, he starts to cry a strange liquid, showing that something malignant has taken over his being. At that moment, the possessed one lets out a macabre and terrifying laugh as darkness consumes what remained of his original kindness. Without any mercy, he grabs the neck of one of his friends, who begs for help in the face of that brutal and unexpected strength. With a bizarre smile on his face, the villain shows pleasure in seeing others suffer and proves that he is now a real threat. The other survivors are in total shock upon realizing that their former companion has gone completely insane and become a monster. At this, the dark aura continues to grow while the young man prepares to commit terrible acts against the people around him. Leaping with agility, he rushes at the remaining colleagues to continue his frantic attack, without a shred of remorse. With a violent movement, the aggressor knocks his target to the ground and shows that he won't stop until he eliminates everyone present. Then, he lifts his friend by the neck while the victim pleads for him to stop this madness immediately, but without success. Meanwhile, in another place, a boy appears trapped between enormous glowing green roots and wonders how he ended up in that situation. With a sweaty face and an expression of pure dread, the young man tries to understand what happened while the vines squeeze him tighter and tighter. At this, we see a bully humiliating the poor guy and warning him that from now on, his awakened name will be Pochi. With that, the aggressor forces the young man to accompany him to the new area of the station while the others mock him. But the young man is paralyzed by sheer terror and ends up being abandoned halfway by those who called themselves his colleagues. At that moment, the protagonist observes a bizarre structure covered in giant roots that seem to have appeared out of nowhere. The system reveals that inside is the one called Pochi, who is actually a level 20 one-tree user. Then, the streamer realizes he knows that boy from somewhere, but notices his name is very different from the original. Carefully, the hero knocks on those wooden beams, announcing that he is just a content creator wanting to do a quick interview. At this, the young man realizes he won't get a friendly response and concludes he will have to act in another way to get in. With determination, he warns that he will force his way, and if no one opens up and estimates it will take 3 hours to undo everything. Then, the young man starts pulling the trunks with great force, ignoring the blood stains that still cover his battle clothes. But to his surprise, the blockage ends up giving way much faster than he had imagined at the start of the operation. At that instant, the master of live stream squeezes through the small hole to see who is hidden inside that cocoon. With a smile on his face, the young man sticks his head in the gap and greets the resident, asking if he can ask a few questions. But the boy inside goes into a total panic and starts screaming, asking the stranger not to come near him. Soon after, the system informs of the arrival on the platform, and a giant wolf appears, jumping toward the humans. At that moment, the beast tries to bite the hero, but ends up hitting its snout on the invisible transmission barrier protecting him. With that, the monster is left looking confused, not understanding how its prey remained intact after that surprise attack. The streamer lets out a disappointed sigh, because he thinks this new battlefield isn't scary enough for the video. Then, he turns his attention back to the strange construction made of branches, realizing that it was created by a skill. At this, the young man knocks on the structure again, politely asking for the occupant to open the way so they can talk. He holds one of the branches firmly and warns that if the occupant doesn't come out on his own, he'll be forced to get in by any means. Then, the streamer sticks his face into the crack with a bizarre smile, while the dripping blood makes the atmosphere even more tense. At this, the boy inside goes into a total panic and starts screaming for help in a very desperate way. Because of this, the hero observes the little one's reaction and realizes he is terrified of anything that approaches. At that moment, the young man finally enters the hideout made of trunks and begins to analyze the cramped and dark environment. He raises his hands to show he isn't a danger, while the poor guy points a knife at him, trembling non-stop. Then, the young man formally introduces himself as Yamada Taro and states that he is only there to do a quick interview. But the boy remains totally terrified and holds the weapon with both hands, as if his life depends on it. At this, the protagonist notices that his player name was imposed by bullies and deduces that he suffered a lot at the hands of aggressors. Calmly, the streamer approaches and says he can listen to his whole story if he wants to vent about what happened. At that instant, he concludes that the boy was forced into that dangerous place and that his friends were all eliminated. The little one listens to everything in silence with an expression of deep sadness. But the hero points out an important detail, saying he didn't see any bodies lying outside that wooden structure. With that, the young man falls to his knees in despair, imagining that his former companions were devoured by some terrible monster. Then, the master of live streams approaches and explains that there are no man-eating beasts there, and that everything resets at midnight. He continues, stating that no one will come to save him because everyone fled and left the boy behind without a second thought. At that moment, the young man asks if the survivor stayed in that place enduring everything just because of a secret mission. The boy confirms and asks if he should share the details of the objective, but the protagonist seems a bit reluctant. With that, the streamer denies the request, warning that if he tells the details, the mission might reset and he'll have to wait 7 days. But the little one states he can handle more time in isolation, although shortly after he changes his mind and begs for real help. On his knees, the boy begs for help, and the protagonist becomes thoughtful, evaluating if it's worth taking the young man with him. With that, the young man extends his hand and asks if the little one accepts appearing frequently in his future video broadcasts. Then, the hero shakes the hand of his new ally, who solemnly promises to follow all instructions to ensure his life. At that moment, the little one thanks him while crying with joy, while the streamer maintains his professional posture before the virtual cameras. At this, the system informs that the secret platform survival mission has been shared between the 2 players at the location, but the young man warns that if they leave that spot, the tree fortress will vanish and leave them totally unprotected in the field. He explains that it's impossible to create another barrier like that one, and the veteran asks if they can at least adjust its size. With a positive response, the master of live streams observes the branch structure, thinking of a way to use it tactically. At that instant, the young man suggests that the rookie focus only on protecting his own body instead of creating something giant. Then, the hero orders them to head to the escalator while the boy agrees, still trembling a bit from nerves. At this, the 2 approach the enormous metal stairs that should take them to the next level of that dark and empty station. But as soon as they step on the first stair, they realize something is wrong, and the pair's progress is suddenly interrupted. With that, the little one notices the escalator isn't moving, and the protagonist is quite surprised by this annoying complication. At that moment, the young man senses danger and tells his companion to use his tree skill only for constant personal defense. He comments that staying hidden for 7 days would be very boring for the audience, and decides to head into direct combat. Then, the hero prepares to face the pack of fierce wolves that begins to surround the pair on that deserted platform. At this, one of the monsters lets out a terrifying growl, showing its sharp fangs ready to tear into anyone who comes close. But the streamer charges forward with absurd speed, wielding his dagger and proving he has no fear of these wild beasts. With precise movements, the young man cuts through several wolves at the same time while blue lightning glows throughout the intense battlefield. The boy is amazed by such strength and wonders if that guy is really just a simple creator. The system announces that the secret platform mission has been completed, and with that, the hero receives the long-desired Book of Rebirth as a reward. At that moment, he goes back to the escalator, but notices it has stopped working, and the boy beside him despairs, thinking the end has come. With a calm smile, the protagonist says the little one is being too negative and tries to calm the new ally's nerves during the wait. The rookie is totally shocked by the veteran's calmness and wonders if he is really a normal human being made of flesh and bone in that place. Suddenly, a messaging system announces that an important guest wants to talk, but the young man denies the request, and soon a bizarre mission appears. Recalling the past, the young man recognizes the mission creator as a persistent wanderer who doesn't want to miss the chance to get easy content. The new task consists of taming a runaway celestial dog named Poon Poon and protecting him until his owner appears to pick him up at the station. Sharpening his senses, the hero hears a strange sound coming from somewhere nearby and tries to identify where that bizarre noise is coming from. Upon finding the target, he sees a small bulldog barking and thinks this mission will be too easy compared to the challenges he faced before. Accepting the challenge, the streamer crouches before the little animal while trying to think of a way to earn the trust of that cute creature. Analyzing the pet, the young man sees the creature is at level 35 and hates being touched, so he decides to offer a juicy sausage to the doggy. With eyes glowing with joy, the little dog is totally enchanted by the treat, and seems to have completely forgotten his previous anger. Playing with his new friend, the young man comments that that food is a very expensive luxury item and cost a small fortune in game diamonds. Devouring the snack with great enthusiasm, the animal finishes its meal, while the veteran observes every movement to ensure he is safe. Becoming thoughtful, the young man wonders at what point the real owner of the creature will appear to fulfill the final part of the mission objective. Holding the pet carefully, the hero feels like he has seen that little face somewhere before and tries to recall where he met the little one. The little dog lets out a happy bark, showing that he now totally trusts his new protector. While the atmosphere at the location becomes much lighter, hearing a shout from afar, he realizes the animal's master has finally arrived and prepares to hand over the runaway right now. Appearing with immense wings, an angry little angel appears shouting, and the system reveals that her level is a complete mystery to the protagonist. Without warning, the girl lunges with a powerful punch, but his automatic transmission barrier blocks her blow. With that, the hero feels a sharp pain and believes his arm might have broken because of that entity's absurd impact. But the winged blonde girl now holds her doggy and states with a serious look that that last attack revealed the whole truth about the young man. At that moment, the hero realizes the girl has a very short fuse and can be easily manipulated if provoked the right way. With that, the entity points a finger at the guy and asks why he isn't the least bit surprised by its divine appearance. Then, the blonde starts showing off her beauty, but the veteran complains that she broke his arm and still wants to be praised. But the protagonist quickly points to his new ally, who is shaking with fear right behind him in that strange situation. The little one quickly gets close to the boy's face and asks if she's pretty, while the newbie shyly agrees. In that instant, the little angel turns to the streamer, complaining that his reaction was very weak compared to the other guys. At that, the content creator scratches his head and states that she should first thank him for finding her runaway pet. But the blonde gets furious and says she is already 284 years old and therefore deserves to be treated with the utmost respect. With a smile on his face, the man says she's nothing but a spoiled brat, leaving the girl completely outraged by the mean comment. Then he explains that normal adults don't act in such a childish way, and the celestial creature turns with all the anger she feels now. At that moment, the guy reveals that the little dog doesn't like her and calls the pet, which runs straight into his arms with great joy. With that, the live stream master pets the animal, while the blonde makes up an excuse that the pet was just taking a walk by itself on the street. At this, the hero refutes the idea, saying the pet was running away from hunger, but the little one prefers to imagine it was just a fun picnic. Then the veteran explains that since he's a streamer, he can see the pet's status, and the girl asks how she can become its best friend. Very calmly, he shows an image of sausages and claims that food is much more effective than any kiss to gain trust. Annoyed, the little angel yells that her kisses are worth more than jewels, but decides to thank him for the help, as she claims to be a very responsible adult. In that instant, she shows a sacred feather with healing powers and quickly begins to mend the wound on our protagonist's arm. With the job done, the blonde announces she's leaving and calls her little dog to follow her out of that strange, empty place. At that moment, the newbie tries to follow the small entity as she floats away with a very grumpy and determined expression on her face. Finally, the blonde turns her face away with disdain and states that she hates men without determination, ending that bizarre encounter at the train station. The boy is terrified by the little angel's departure as the atmosphere at the train station becomes very tense and dangerous for the pair. But the protagonist notices that the mission has been officially completed, receiving the rewards promised by the system. At that very moment, he analyzes that the jade fragrance oil, when mixed with the angel feather, transforms into a very powerful holy oil. With this, the young man discovers that this item is extremely effective against demon-type monsters that can appear at any time. At that moment, the guy recalls that whenever catastrophe occurs in the tutorial field, demonized humans tend to appear. And when these evil beings show up on a battlefield, the situation usually gets out of control for regular players. But the system states that in the midst of this darkness, a great hero always ends up being born to restore order to the world. Suddenly, the streamer notices someone coming down the escalator and stays on alert to find out who the new visitor is. A dark silhouette with a bizarre smile appears halfway down, showing that things are going to get complicated from now on. The veteran identifies the enemy as a demonized human who, despite having no weapons, is still considered very dangerous. The system shows that the opponent is a level 20, lesser demon with the terrible achievement of having taken out a friend. With a disturbing look, the traitor says he was looking forward to meeting his old master again in that dark station. He starts provoking the guy, stating that if the hero were that strong, he could have helped the group from the beginning of the fight. At that moment, the villain stares closely at the protagonist, saying that he is the one truly responsible for the defeat of all his colleagues. Then the monster prepares to attack, while the young man tries to react, but the opponent's speed is something out of the ordinary. At this, the aggressor asks if the guy planned to stab him with that small weapon and jumps to deliver a precise blow. Unfortunately, the hero ends up being hit by a deep attack, and red liquid splatters everywhere as he collapses. Fallen on the ground, the young man realizes he can't move his own body properly and becomes worried about his critical health condition. The enemy mocks the situation, noticing that the streamer's special broadcast barrier is no longer working to protect him. With that, the transformed human steps on the hero's chest, stating that he will take him out one way or another to finish his job. In the middle of a red stain, the demon complains that his opponent was too weak and a huge disappointment. With that, he turns around and starts looking for the other boy in the HUD, wondering where he could have hidden, but suddenly, the protagonist appears behind him with an item, and the system announces that the Book of Rebirth is being activated. At that moment, the jar he was holding shatters into several pieces, and a strange liquid begins to pour out from inside it. Then the guy pours all of that substance on the enemy's head, who can't even react to the surprise attack. With the dagger in hand, the hero tries to attack the monster's neck, but realizes its skin is too tough to pierce. At this, he aims for the horns, which are the weak spot of demons, but the blade can't cut that part of the body either. The young man then breaks off a piece of the horn with his hand and says he'll have to use another method to end the fight. To everyone's surprise, he puts the fragment in his mouth and prepares to finish off the opponent in a very bizarre way. With a strong bite, the guy shatters the demon's horn, using only the strength of his teeth to win the battle. With the victory, the system offers a secret class of a great hero, but he refuses and decides to pass the offer to the boy, Kazuki. He then approaches the little guy and asks if he wants this chance to get stronger, but warns that there will be a sacrifice. Even with the warning, the young man accepts right away, and the two agree to start speaking more informally from now on. But the boy explains that the hero class merged with his tree user class and ended up creating the Tree King class. The newbie asks if the new class is good, and the streamer confirms it while thanking him and saying he's now counting on him for the videos. At this, several achievements are unlocked, and the system asks if he wants to register them in the Hall of Fame, but he immediately declines. His streamer's eye ability is upgraded, and now he can see people's feelings, like the boy's admiration. With the tutorial finished, the duo prepares to go up the stairs, but soon realizes they are no longer alone in the place. At that moment, the little one sees the guys wearing the same uniform as him, and it becomes clear that they are the bullies from his school. The protagonist then hugs the boy and says that since he doesn't know their names, he'll just call them the Three Little Pigs. The leader of the bullies yells at the little one, calling him Pochi, and complains that he didn't contact the group. With that, he continues the intimidation, asking where the boy was hiding and reveals that they even went to his house to look for him. The aggressor touches the guy's head and mentions that since he didn't answer, they went to bother his grandmother for news. At that moment, the hero steps in, and the bully asks who he is, but the young man replies that he's just a streamer passing through. Then the content creator asks if they plan to hit the boy, and the aggressor replies that the police won't show up there. With a malicious smile, the protagonist agrees and says he has already decided on the theme for his next gameplay video. He then puts his arm around his ally and explains that even though you can revive, the pain of having your insides hurt is very real. The group leader gets furious and tells the veteran not to get involved, stating that he will teach the boy a lesson for his audacity. But he kicks the little one hard and complains that his grandmother's wallet, which they took, had no money inside. Seeing the scene, the hero points to himself and says with a smile that the bully's target is right there in front of him. With that, the boy's eyes widen in surprise, but then his expression quickly turns to one of great determination. At that moment, the young man unleashes his Tree King power and summons gigantic roots that burst from his back with energy. The enormous roots pierce through the three aggressors at once, and the streamer comments that it looked like that hurt a lot. Immediately after, the bullies' bodies fall to the ground, completely defeated, and with no chance to counter the attack. The hero then starts to interview the little one and asks why he didn't eliminate them, but the boy says he didn't want to become a bad person. Even knowing they would revive, the young man stood firm, and with that, the live stream master decides to change the target of his interview. Lying on the ground, the leader of the aggressors begs for them to finish him off and desperately apologizes for what he did to the grandmother. Crouching down, the streamer asks why he mistreated the boy so much and realizes the interview is going nowhere. With the dagger in his hand, the guy gets the bully's attention, showing that the conversation is about to get much more serious. He then finishes off the aggressor with a precise strike, stating that he's not a nobody who can be ignored by them. The boy gets desperate and asks what the streamer is going to do now, but the hero just comments that the fight was no big deal. At this, the little one says his savior is incredible and that he showed him the path he should follow, thus awakening a new trait. Meanwhile, the famous Egan Paul shows his friend Joseph a VIP quest that involves a lot of diamonds, and that only he received. The foreigner explains that the objective is to track a streamer for 1 million diamonds, and complains that the guy has more VIP packages than he does. Even without interacting with the audience, the target has more viewers, and the blonde guy suspects something very strange is happening there. At this, the big friend asks if the content creator is just going to start looking for the guy randomly. But the blonde guy reveals that the target operates near Tokyo Central Station and has recently been hanging out with a tree user. Back to our hero, he is satisfied with the stream and decides to check how many donations he managed to collect with his video. He is shocked to see he received 921,000 diamonds and is unsure if he should be grateful for such an absurd amount. The guy says his goal is to be like Mamoru box and not like the foreigner, but admits that the amount of donations was completely insane. With that, he decides to withdraw 700,000 diamonds, and since he's ending a 7-year cycle, he thinks about visiting his parents. So the young man gets dressed in formal clothes and elegant shoes to finally go meet his family after so long. Arriving there, he notices some men are harassing a girl in broad daylight and wonders what's going on. But upon looking closer, he recognizes the girl's face and wonders if that girl is really his sister, Mayu. The girl also recognizes him and calls him brother, but asks him not to get close to the trouble under any circumstances. At this, the aggressors turn to the newcomer and ask with a mocking tone who he thinks he is to meddle in their business. With a very calm and serene smile on his face, the guy simply replies that he is that young woman's older brother. His sister gets annoyed and tells him not to act like a brother after disappearing for 7 years, and he thinks she's still not cute at all. Then one of the thugs approaches and points at the young man's chest, telling him to get out of there before he gets hurt. But the hero calmly takes out his phone and says he's going to make a call first while dialing 110 for the police. The thug is shocked and asks if the guy is stupid for calling the authorities right there. At this, he starts laughing and calls his cronies attention to the young man in the suit's foolish action. Then the protagonist pulls out a knife and states that by reporting it, he fulfilled his minimum duty as a human being. The aggressor is surprised by the weapon, but continues the provocation, asking what he's going to do with that knife. But without giving the guy time to react, the hero attacks the enemy's hand with a quick and precise strike. At this, the thug screams in pain while holding his injured hand, and his friend is shocked by the violent scene. The second goon gets an expression of pure panic and anger upon seeing what happened to his partner. He then charges at the guy, but the young man dodges with ease and counter, attacks in a brutal and swift manner. Desperate, the last criminal grabs the protagonist's sister and uses her as a hostage to try to control the situation. With the girl in his arms, the thug yells for the hero to drop the weapon immediately, or she will get hurt. The young woman is terrified as the aggressor continues to shout for her brother to obey his orders without hesitation. From a distance, the guy watches the scene calmly and seems to agree with the kidnapper's demands to save his sister. But in an unexpected move, he throws the knife with absurd speed and precision toward the target. With that, the blade hits the enemy squarely in the forehead, who falls to the ground instantly with no chance to defend himself. The veteran explains that guys like that always use hostages, but let their guard down, and he took advantage of that opening. With everything resolved, he approaches his sister, who is crying with relief, and says that now they can finally go home. As he takes a step, a voice yells at him not to move, and we see that the police have arrived at the scene of the confrontation. An officer points his baton and orders the young man to drop the weapon and surrender, as he is caught in the act. Already in handcuffs, the guy explains that they are the victims, and that everything he did was in self-defense. He asks them not to tell his parents, and at the station, a detective calls him a dangerous criminal and asks for his name. The guy insists he's the victim, and that the other guys should be arrested, but the detective just wants to know his name. At this, the protagonist starts to get annoyed and, with a look of contempt, calls the police officer loud. The officer gets furious and threatens to hit the young man, who warns him that if he does, he'll only get hurt in the process. Then the officer's hand hits an invisible barrier, and he gets a shock so strong that his bones become visible. The hero then says he warned him and reveals that he pressed the GM call button, and they should be arriving any moment. In that instant, a huge, shining magic circle appears on the ceiling of the police station as several white feathers fall from the sky. Suddenly, an angel with enormous wings descends from the light, leaving everyone present completely shocked by the appearance. The celestial entity complains that it has never seen an idiot call a GM during a beta test of the game system. Even in handcuffs, the guy leans back and says that the power of the state unjustly interrupted his gaming session. With that, the angel asks him to wait a moment while it analyzes some information on a bluish light screen. The detective is confused and asks who that being is and how it managed to enter the police station through the ceiling. But the protagonist makes a gesture, and the officer's mouth is magically sealed, preventing him from saying anything else. Then the angel explains that this is a conflict between players and that state interference is not allowed at such times. It reveals that it received a warning not to intervene in disputes between awakened ones, and the officer realizes that all of this is real. At that moment, police chiefs from all over the world see the angel's image, and it becomes clear that governments have already grown accustomed to the system. With a magical glow, our hero's handcuffs open by themselves and fall from his wrists, freeing him completely. The guy stands up and says he never thought he'd be taking handcuffs off a criminal, but continues to claim he is the victim. The celestial being asks how he knew about the GM call function, and the young man replies that it was written in the player's manual. Surprised, the angel asks if he read the whole thing, and the guy says it's obvious, as manuals were made to be read. The entity then notes that the player's information is private, but manages to see his name, Yamada Teru, and his streamer class. The guy gets a dumbfounded look and thinks that in the end, it's useless to try to hide his information from the system. The entity says he is suspicious for being a top ranker who doesn't appear on the list and has no interest in fame. At this, the young man crosses his arms and asks, with an air of impatience, where the celestial being is going with this conversation. Then the angel gets a furious expression and directly accuses the guy of being a regressor who went back in time. But the hero gives a smirk and plays dumb, asking what regression is and if it means going back to the past. The winged creature demands an honest answer, and at this, the system offers the Room of Truth quest to resolve the impasse. This room is a test to judge if a player is telling the truth, and the difficulty increases according to their level. Since he has a low level, the test should only last 1 minute, and the young man asks if he can stream the whole thing live. With a cynical smile, the angel replies that it has no right to prevent the legal gameplay of any participant in the game. The guy thinks that if they discover his secret, they will consider him a bug and eliminate him, as the system does not allow regression. The screen shows he has 8,200 viewers, but the hero says he's already prepared and isn't worried about it. He also thinks that the angel Kihal hates problems, and at this, the entity begins to prepare the Room of Truth ritual. With a confident smile, he thinks that he is not a regressor, and that no one can prove anything until the crystal of truth appears. The system announces entry into the room, and a small crystal sphere appears, floating in a pillar of golden light. Before the mysterious object, the streamer plays dumb and asks what that shiny thing in the air is. The angel holds the orb and explains that it is the crystal of truth, and that it turns red if the person tells a lie. To test it, the young man says he is a woman, and the crystal turns red. Then he claims he is very handsome. At this, the sphere starts spinning with crazy colors, and the guy wonders how it's going to judge whether that's true or not. He then asks what he should say, and thinks that by stalling, he managed to buy about 40 seconds of time. But the angel gets straight to the point and asks how he adapted so quickly and how he knows everything that is going to happen. The guy replies with a smile that he knows everything because he knows the great prophet, leaving the angel very confused by the answer. He explains that this so-called prophet is just a guy who read the entire player's manual and posted the summary on an online forum. With that, the young man shows the post on his phone and claims he just read all the information in advance to prepare himself. The crystal of truth remains its purple color, indicating that our hero did not tell any lies to the game system. Then, the celestial entity asks why he did all of that, and the guy replies that it was to prepare for the future. He reveals that the prophet predicted that monsters would appear everywhere in the world, all at once, without warning. Furthermore, tutorial fields would emerge, and society would fall into complete chaos, with public order being destroyed. In other words, the streamer states with a smile that he knew the future, and that's why he managed to get where he is now. At that moment, the crystal finally stops spinning, and the timer runs out, ending the truth test. The angel then concludes that the young man learned about the future through the prophecies and, because of that, prepared for what was coming. At this, the guy quickly jots something down on a piece of paper and throws it towards the orb, a golden energy enveloping his hand. With that, the entity begins the final judgment and searches through past data using the keyword regression to investigate. Several images from the player's past are analyzed at high speed by the system to find any concrete proof, but the result shows that there is no record of the awakened one, Yamada Teru, mentioning or confessing to being a regressor. The paper he threw earlier transforms into a certificate of truth, officially validating his testimony to the system. With the document in hand, the angel announces that there is no problem and that he has been cleared of all suspicions. Then, with a bizarre smile, the entity asks him to continue enjoying the game and disappears from the police station. Suddenly, his sister runs towards him, shouting his name, and throws herself at him to try to give him a big hug. But the protagonist simply dodges the hug, causing the girl to go straight past him and fall right onto the floor. Lying on the floor, the young woman asks why he dodged, and the guy calmly replies that it was her own fault. The sister holds onto him as he asks who the two men standing right behind her are at that moment. Two men in suits approach and hand their business cards to the young man in a very professional manner. He takes the card and sees it's from a lawyer, but states that he no longer needs legal help for his case. His sister gets furious and shouts, asking why he no longer needs a lawyer to defend himself. With his hand on the back of his neck, he explains that a lot happened, but in the end, he managed to leave the police station without any issues. The young woman is relieved but denies that she was worried, while her brother teases her with a smile on his face. He then points out that she's almost crying, and that this proves how worried she was about his well-being. But the guy thinks that before he regressed, she didn't have a happy ending, and that he should be worried about her. The girl asks if he has any injuries, but the young man denies it right away and says he's perfectly fine. She insists that he is hurt and shows the scratches on his hand, but the guy says that's nothing serious. She then takes his hand to heal him, and the hero is surprised to realize that his sister has also awakened powers. The young woman confirms she has awakened and asks if he has a problem with it while using her healing power. He thinks that the future has changed because last time she passed away as a normal person, and now she has the priest class. The guy analyzes that the blood priest class can use one's own blood to heal others or to attack, but the class only becomes truly strong with 3 skills, and he wonders if he should help her unlock them. The sister gets angry at his silence and says she was worried, but the young man just takes the opportunity to tease her again. With a red face, she tells him to shut up but thanks him, says she only managed because of his help. He teases her again, but the young woman denies it and says she was impressed with the way he handled the thugs. With a smile, he asks if she's happy that he's her brother, and the young woman denies it in embarrassment, not admitting the truth. She calls him reliable, but gross, and tells them to go home, while the guy is shocked by her comment. Arriving at the front door, he feels that after 7 years, the place seems like a stranger's residence to him. With the shoes at the entrance, the guy wonders if his parents are really inside, waiting for his arrival. He then remembers that before regressing, his family was taken out by a serial attacker named Mahara. Back then, the young man was obsessed with getting stronger, and because of that, he failed to protect the people he loved. But with a determined smile on his face, he assures himself that this time things will not end the same way. At this, the hero finally turns the door knob and opens the door to reunite with his relatives after a long time. His sister runs in and yells that she's home, while the guy watches her with a more serious expression on his face. A female voice answers from the kitchen and says she's busy chopping some vegetables for the family dinner. The girl then runs to hug her mother, who is surprised by the gesture and wonders what's gotten into her all of a sudden. The young woman says she just wanted a little affection, but her mother warns her to be careful, as she is holding a knife. Even with the danger, the young woman keeps insisting on the hug, leaving her mother unsure of how to react to the scene. With a smile, she calls her brother to join the moment and tells him to come over to them in the kitchen. In that instant, a hand holding chopsticks stops moving upon hearing that the prodigal son has finally returned. The protagonist's father appears with a spoon in his hand and asks, with a smile, if Ryuma has really come home. The streamer is speechless, and with his eyes full of tears upon seeing his father again after 7 years away. With a welcoming smile, the man in glasses welcomes his son who had been missing for a long time. Very emotionally, the guy replies that he's finally back home and seems very happy with the family reunion. The father then asks if he has eaten anything, but the young man replies that he hasn't had a chance yet. The older man then invites him to have dinner with them and says that now they can all eat together as a family. But his mother comes over and slaps him on the back, complaining that he got way too thin during these years. With his arm aching, the guy complains that he's not as thin as his mother thinks, and that the slap hurt a lot. Sitting at the table, he sees that his mother has prepared his favorite rolled omelet, and she confirms that she put cheese inside. As he eats, he reflects that the last time he couldn't protect his family, and that he feels guilty about it. With an emotional smile, the young man thinks that even though it's an ordinary dinner, he feels like crying with happiness. At this, his father asks if he's been doing well during all the time he was away from home and his family. The son shyly replies yes, and that he's been getting by just fine for the past 7 years, surviving on his own. With an air of relief, the older man says he understands and is happy to know that the boy is okay. But the mother reveals with a wink that his father acts tough, but used to cry while looking at his son's photo. The streamer is surprised to hear the revelation and stares at his father with a look of complete shock on his face. He then apologizes for worrying them both so much and promises that things will be different from now on. With that, the young man places an envelope full of money on the table as a way to repay his family's support. With a satisfied smile on his face, he announces to everyone that he has finally gotten a good job. Later, lying in bed, he is surprised that his parents simply gave all the money back to him. He remembers his father returning the envelope and saying that his son should be the one to use that money. Suddenly, his sister knocks on his bedroom door and announces she's coming in to talk with him for a bit. The guy is surprised and comments that it's very rare for her to knock on the door before invading his personal space. The girl asks if he really got a job and says that a normal job doesn't pay that much money. She then questions what he's been up to, and the young man calmly replies that he is now a professional streamer. At this, the young woman asks about the 500,000 and if that was all he earned in 7 years of hard work. With a smirk, he replies that it wasn't and reveals that amount was what he earned in a single day. His sister is completely confused by his answer and then crosses her arms with an expression of total disbelief. She asks him to be honest and says she won't look down on him even if he only earned 500,000 in 7 years. With a calm smile, the guy changes the subject and calls her Miss Mayu in a very polite and formal way. At this, the girl gets goosebumps and complains that the way he spoke was very creepy and extremely weird. He then asks if she likes her job, and the young woman replies that nobody really likes to work. With a finger on her chin, the young woman says that healing people is fun and that it gives her a sense of accomplishment. But she soon complains that a normal job is boring and that she needs to go to the East Mart dungeon to get stronger. So her brother invites her to go to a dungeon with him to get a perfect trait for her class. The young woman accepts the invitation right away and says she was already thinking of taking a few days off from work anyway. The guy is surprised by her response and says he thought she would refuse the invitation without a second thought. The sister then says that if he knows he hasn't been a good brother, he should start acting like one from now on. With a smile, she admits she was very happy about his return and welcomes him home like a brave and strong hero. With her face red from embarrassment, the girl tells him to stop talking and go to bed to end the conversation. The next day, he gets dressed to go out, but his sister complains about his clothes and says he can't go to work like that. The guy is wearing a pajama shirt, sweatpants, and an old pair of sneakers he found at home to go out. The young woman asks him to put in a little more effort, but he doesn't understand, and she yells at him to shut up and let's go. Already on the street, a boy waves from a distance and shouts, "Yamada-san," catching the attention of the sibling pair on the sidewalk. It's Kizuki, who approaches with a smile on his face and seems very happy to meet his live stream master again. The hero then introduces his sister, Mayu, to the boy and explains that they met during the game's tutorial. The young woman and the boy shake hands and introduce themselves, while the 15-year-old asks her not to be so formal. The system announces that the East Mart dungeon is active and asks if they want to enter that dangerous place. Right at the entrance, a random player is surprised by a giant monkey that attacks him with a devastating punch. With the blow, the man falls unconscious to the ground, and the other monkeys start dancing around him to celebrate. Seeing the scene, the hero's sister comments that the place is a complete mess and that the situation is very dangerous. The protagonist notices that the guy's skull was crushed and that there are no other living players around right now. With that, he asks Sauda to use his tree fortress to create a safe zone for the group to protect themselves. The boy obeys and summons huge roots that grow quickly, forming a protective barrier for the trio. Once safe, the veteran asks the newbie he can make the wall transparent for them to see outside. But the young man explains that he can't make a one-way mirror yet to observe the enemies safely. So the streamer suggests creating a small passage that only he can use, and the boy confirms that this is possible. With the plan set, the hero prepares to leave the wooden fortress and face the monsters outside. He then faces the monkeys, who are sitting on top of several fruit boxes in the middle of the supermarket. The creatures charge at the guy, who prepares for the imminent combat against the enraged beasts. But the young man activates his broadcast barrier, which blocks the monster's punch with a strong bluish energy. The system reveals that the enemy is a level 20, three-Tekken monkey that attacks using its own fists. He notices that the creatures become more aggressive near the fruits and suspects they are protecting some item. At this, the guy opens the system shop to look for something tastier than the fruits to offer as a gift. He then buys a supreme banana for 5,000 diamonds and offers it to the monkeys with a bizarre smile. One of the creatures approaches with great curiosity and takes the banana from the streamer's hand to try the fruit. Upon eating the offering, the creature's eyes shine with happiness, showing that the plan was a success. With the special food, the monkeys become extremely happy and start celebrating with great excitement in the middle of the market. With a smile on his face, the hero then asks if they want more bananas and offers a bunch to the hungry creatures. He buys a few more fruits from the system shop and notices that all the creatures are now acting very well behaved. At this, the system announces that the Tekken monkeys have become friendly and that the second floor of the dungeon has been unlocked. Meanwhile, the famous streamer Egan Paul looks at his phone with a look of complete shock and can't believe what he's seeing. With an air of suspicion, he wonders what kind of channel that is that managed to grab his attention so much. The man in sunglasses with his arms crossed continues to stare at the screen with an expression of pure disbelief. Then a message notifies him that he is entering the Japan map, and he confirms that's where this Yamada Taro is. Suddenly, he receives the instant challenge achievement and wonders what the heck that unexpected prize is. The system explains that he has gained access to an integrated video platform called LTube, exclusive to the Earth server. With the phone in his hand, he realizes that this is the video site Egan mentioned and decides to take a look at the content. But the blonde guy gets confused when he sees the Japanese characters, as he has never seen that writing in his entire life. Even with the strange language, he can read the live chat and wonders how he can understand everything written there. A system tip then notifies him that automatic language translation is activated on the platform for all users. He finds a channel with no thumbnail and a lazy title, but which has 10,000 viewers, and he becomes very curious. The stream shows one of the dungeon monkeys charging angrily to attack the player with all its might, but the creature's punch is easily blocked by our protagonist broadcast barrier, who protects himself. The foreigner is completely shocked by the scene and puts his hand on his chin, unable to believe what he just saw. With a panicked expression, he yells that the channel is too dangerous and that something very strange is happening. He analyzes the fight and notes that the guy's barrier is different and that his progress is so fast it seems unnatural. On the second floor, the group finds a boxing ring, and the boy warns his friend to be very careful with the monkeys. There, they find the dungeon boss, a muscular monkey with a champion's belt named Tekken Monk Killer. With a very scary smile, the creature stares at the hero with its eyes glowing, showing that the fight is going to be serious. The guy's hand glows, and he remembers that the secret piece of the place is to win a match by following the game's rules. Wearing boxing gloves and a stylish shirt, he wonders if the enemy's blows will hurt a lot in that fight. With a smile, he decides not to use weapons and remembers a girl named Yoris, wondering if she's okay. At that moment, the ring's bell rings loudly, indicating that the fight is finally about to begin for real on the second floor. The timer marks the first of 3 rounds, and the boss already positions itself for combat with its guard up high. But the protagonist dodges the blow with extreme ease and looks disappointed by the opponent's slowness. He notices that the monster leaves many openings in its guard, and therefore, he can avoid all attacks without difficulty. With that, the guy lands a direct punch to the monkey's face, and his friend notices he's not even using his special barrier. The streamer finds the fight too easy, and is disappointed by the lack of challenge that the boss is offering. He then finishes the sequence with a powerful kick to the creature's head, which is unable to defend against the surprise blow. The impact of the kick is so strong that the monkey's face completely deforms from the violence of the attack it received. With its eyes rolled back and its tongue out, the creature is completely stunned and has no chance of continuing the fight. Thus, the boss falls knocked out on the ring floor, and our hero stands as the great winner of the match. The first round ends, and the guy realizes that the monster hits hard, but doesn't have the stamina to endure the fight. He thinks he could end it all now, but decides to follow the rules of boxing and wait for the mandatory break. The second round begins, and the boss can barely stand, with its legs trembling from accumulated fatigue. At this, the streamer faces his exhausted opponent and prepares to finish the combat once and for all in that ring. The guy lands a punch on the monkey, but the monster retaliates with the same intensity, showing that the fight is very serious. At that moment, the opponent's boxing glove is shown in detail as he prepares for another charge. With that, the creature lands a powerful blow to the streamer's face, who feels the full impact of that strong hit. Bored, the hero thinks his broadcast barrier must be very strong and soon has a brilliant idea. He then wonders what would happen if he wrapped all that protective energy around his fists. So the young man decides to test his new theory and begins to concentrate a bluish power in his hand to attack. With his fist enveloped in energy, he prepares to deliver a finishing blow to his opponent in the ring. At this, the streamer lands a devastating punch right on the monkey's chin. Using his newly created special technique, the impact of the blow is so strong that the boss is thrown far away, flying through the air of the fighting arena. The guy is shocked by the power and wonders if this is what a girl named Yuri was talking about before. Seeing his enemy down, he says he will follow the rules to the end and wait for the monkey referee to declare the winner. With that, the small referee raises the hero's arm high, confirming his victory over the dungeon boss. The system then announces the victory, and he wins the champion's belt, which can give new abilities to Mayu. He unlocks the first boss defeat achievement and worries that the reward might have been altered. The third floor is unlocked, and the young man is relieved to see that nothing has changed and pretends not to even notice the new floor. But a sudden quest from the creator Wanderer appears, and the guy complains that this person keeps showing up out of nowhere. The quest is called King's Fist, and he understands that the real fight is on the third floor, but decides he won't participate. On the quest acceptance screen, he moves his finger to the No option, determined to ignore this new challenge. Then the system announces that Wanderer is offering a sponsorship of 1 million diamonds for the quest. Seeing the generous offer, the streamer ends up accepting the mission with a look of someone caught by pure greed. The hero convinces himself he only accepted for the mission, but says they first need to get the reward from the first floor. The boy promises he will do better, but the veteran praises him for protecting his sister during the battle. At this, the newbie thinks the girl didn't even need protection and wonders why she is there with her brother. The streamer then offers the champion's belt to his sister as a special gift for her. The young woman is horrified by the item and asks if he really expects her to wear that bizarre accessory. With that, she tells him to wear the belt himself, but the guy explains that the item helps find hidden things. The young woman refuses with a serious face, saying she doesn't need that, but he insists that she will wear it. With a confident smile, the hero says his instinct guarantees that the items on that floor are very good, but the girl questions why he is so desperate for her to wear the belt if the rewards are so good. He just tells her to put the item on at once, but the young woman continues to refuse his request. The guy then raises a finger and makes an offer of 10,000 to try to convince her to wear the accessory. With a serious look, the veteran offers the amount to his sister in exchange for her simply wearing the belt. At this, The young woman accepts the proposal and puts on the belt, saying it's actually kind of fashionable and not so bad after all. Back on the first floor, he notices that other players have arrived and that the place has become dangerous for their level. With that, the streamer warns a female player that she should leave to avoid danger, but she just thanks him. He tries to warn another guy, but the man gets annoyed and tells the guy not to underestimate his strength at all. The hero complains that no one listens to him, and the boy says maybe it's because of his friendly and gentle smile. At that moment, one of the market monkey's eyes glow, and an expression of pure fury appears on its face. With one blow, the young man defeats the creature, and the newbie thinks the enemies seem weak because of his master. The monkeys remain calm near his sister, and he realizes that everyone thinks the place is easy because of the belt's effect. The young ally's face looks dazed, and he says everything seems easy because of his master's incredible strength. Suddenly, the hero's sister notices a mysterious green light shining inside a box full of watermelons. At this, she approaches and finds 2 shining scrolls with the instruction to tear them immediately. Without hesitation, the girl obeys and tears one of the items forcefully to discover its true power. With that, a green energy surrounds the young woman's body, and she feels a strange force flowing through her veins. Satisfied, the protagonist says that the group now has a tank and a healer, with only an attacker missing. Later at a restaurant, he explains that to face the final boss, they will need 2 damage dealers. The newbie then asks why his master can't just be one of the main team's attackers, but the content creator crosses his arms and refuses on the spot, reminding them that his class is just a streamer. He claims that a streamer shouldn't fight on the front lines, and his sister gets very annoyed with the excuse. With a wide smile on his face, the guy confirms he is being very serious and that this is his final decision. The young man says that he is the strongest, but the hero compares it to being good at soccer, but not knowing how to play basketball. He then changes the subject, saying they need to find attackers, but a strange voice interrupts them right away. A blonde man in sunglasses appears and asks if the guy is the famous streamer he was looking for. The blonde man calls for a certain Joseph, but the hero says he's mistaken and has the wrong person there. But the man insists and points to the group, claiming he is certain because he saw their faces clearly. With a suspicious look, the streamer asks where he could have seen their faces to be so sure. The blonde man then shows his phone and reveals that he watched their live stream on the platform called LTube. He gets straight to the point and proposes that the guy join forces with him, promising to make him a big star. But the hero refuses the offer, thinking that all the players that Agent produced failed quickly. With a serious look, the hero thinks that the most important thing is that he doesn't trust that blonde agent one bit. The man then introduces himself with a bizarre class and promises to turn the guy into the most famous player in the world. But the streamer turns his back on him and repeats that the agent has the wrong guy for his crazy proposal. Seeing him about to leave, the blonde man yells for him to wait and runs in his direction to try and grab him. With a cold and quick glance, the veteran prepares for the commotion that is about to start in the restaurant. At this, he grabs the man's wrist with great force and stops him from advancing even 1 more inch. The agent is completely shocked by the content creator's speed and strength at that moment. Then, with a quick movement, the young man throws the aggressor over his shoulder as if it were nothing. The man's body is thrown violently against the restaurant floor, leaving everyone impressed. Lying on the floor with his arms outstretched, the blonde man is completely immobilized after that precise blow. He can hardly believe he was thrown so easily by just any random player. At that moment, the man remembers his glorious past and how he was a feared fighter by everyone. He recalls that he was once a wrestling champion and that his strength was legendary back in his school days. With an awkward smile, the guy apologizes and says he hates it when people come up behind him. The agent is perplexed and wonders how a simple streamer can have such absurd physical strength. The young man then extends his hand to help the blonde man get up from the floor after that little scuffle. As the guy walks away, The man wonders if he has some other secret and powerful class. To clear his doubt, he decides to use his potential scanning ability to analyze the player, but when the analysis begins, the screen of his glasses starts to glitch completely, showing nothing useful. All he can see is a light so bright that it mysteriously outshines everything around the guy. The agent concludes that the guy has a monstrous talent that outshines all others, like the light of a great sun. With this, he thinks that the young man could evolve at any moment, and decides he will be responsible for that growth. The blonde man complains that the throw hurt his body, while the hero decides it's time to find the attackers. He then remembers seeing two girls who stood out, and soon finds them in the middle of the crowd there. The system shows that the young woman in the red jacket is a shadow executor, and is on a mission of elimination. The other girl in the hood is also an executor, and has the same level and objective as her teammate. At this, the guy gets excited seeing their 8-star class and approaches to start a conversation. The girl in the jacket turns around, startled by the sudden approach, and apologizes for not noticing him. With a red face, she thinks about rule number 1, which is to never give her contact information to strangers. He thinks she's pretty but says he doesn't want her contact info and just asks if the two of them are also players. The young woman confirms, and he offers help with a secret piece, but she questions the assumption he made earlier. Annoyed, the girl explains that all the guys who approach on the street always end up asking for her contact info. The guy is surprised by her response and asks if that many men usually ask for her contact info around here. At this, the young woman gets even more annoyed with his comment and asks if he's trying to pick a fight. At this, her hooded partner steps in and asks her friend to calm down because he seems to be telling the truth. The streamer then offers a recording as proof, and the hooded girl asks if the information is reliable. Then the other young woman accepts the proposal and says they were already looking for a secret piece anyway. With a smile, he assures them they won't regret it, and the system starts the broadcast of the new mission. The agent complains about the stream's title and suggests something more eye-catching to attract the general public's attention. He thinks that despite being a rookie, the guy is popular because of his daring pace and his high-level commentary. The agent thinks that viewers want quality, and that one day the guy will need his professional help. The girl in the jacket introduces herself as Mai and points to her twin sister, A, who is right behind her in the group. With a shy smile, the boy in the sweatshirt introduces himself as Sauda and says he is the tank of the newly formed team. The newbie then approaches his master and asks how he managed to convince those girls to join them. Very calmly, the hero replies that he just talked to them, but the boy thinks it was because of his handsome face. At this, the young woman in the jacket approaches the guy and asks if she can trust the group's leader, making the boy nervous. He replies that the streamer is a bit weird and scary, but that they will find out everything just by observing his actions. The hero's sister gets angry and defends her brother, but the newbie reminds her that she herself called him weird before, and she denies it. The protagonist thinks the group is too relaxed for people about to face a boss, and decides to get a bit more serious. With that, the third floor is unlocked, and the system announces that the group is entering the field of the Tekken monkey, looking at a portrait. The guy thinks that if he had entered there alone, he certainly would have been eliminated on the spot. He then turns to the boy and tells him to go first, because in the absence of a scout, the tank takes the lead. With his face red from embarrassment, the young man in the sweatshirt gets terrified and asks if it's really safe to go first. The content creator replies that it probably is, and the newbie is shocked by his master's lack of certainty. The veteran points to a huge door and says it must be the entrance, but complains that the lack of traps is boring. But a system message warns that they need the champion's belt to be able to open that secret door. At this, the guy turns to his sister and asks if she didn't throw the belt away, but the young woman confirms she has it. The young woman then hands the golden champion's belt to her brother, who holds it firmly to use on the door. With the item confirmed, the door opens with a bright light, and the system announces that the boss will appear in 10 minutes. The group prepares for battle in a giant arena, as the system tells them to get ready for combat. The guy says the explanation will be short and that the enemy is slow, but hits with the force of a large truck. He then suggests using a tree fortress as a barrier, and the newbie is shocked by the precision of the strategy. But the hero explains that the monster's profile was written on the portrait that showed its year of birth. With that, he warns that the enemy is giant and seems to have too many muscles for its normal size. A diagram shows that one punch from the creature is fatal, and the boy in the sweatshirt wonders if that isn't dangerous. The veteran complains that the young man is the tank and shouldn't be afraid of breaking a few bones in the fight. The boy is terrified by the word, probably, and starts crying in fear due to the uncertainty of the situation. He asks what happens if the prediction is wrong, and the master replies that it would just be bad luck. With a smile, the hero comforts him, saying he will warn him if the monster uses any special ability. The image reinforces that the creature is slow, but if it lands a hit, the damage will certainly be very great. The veteran says the boy's defense is higher than the other monkeys, and that he shouldn't be eliminated. The newbie gets even more scared by his master's lack of certainty and continues to cry in panic. With that, the young man despairs and yells that in the end, he might just get eliminated there. The hero assures him that he will warn him about the abilities, and at that, the 10 minutes of waiting finally end. The monkey boss finally appears in the arena, and the guy says the battle is about to begin right now. He explains that the first step is to distract the enemy with the tree blades before creating the fortress. With a bit of nervousness, the boy activates his power and summons several wooden blades to attack. The blades fly at high speed towards the muscular arm of the giant monkey in the arena, but the creature simply crosses its arms and withstands the full impact of the attacks without moving an inch. With a war cry, the monster takes all the blows to the chest and seems to have suffered no damage at all. With a bluish aura, the monster starts to spin and prepares to unleash a devastating attack towards the group. At that moment, the hero yells for his young ally to create the tree fortress in just 3 seconds to protect themselves. The boy in the sweatshirt then screams desperately and concentrates all his power to summon the wooden barrier. At this, the boss lands an extremely powerful punch on the fortress that was just created by the guy in the middle of the arena. With a smile, the veteran notes that the barrier is stronger than he expected and that they can push the fight even further. He then turns to the twins and tells them to attack the enemy's weak spots, starting with the ankles. With a bluish aura, the two sisters confirm the order and prepare to engage in combat with the dungeon boss. The girls then advance with incredible speed and begin to move around the opponent to attack. They then start a sequence of rapid blows from all sides, trying to hit the giant monkey's legs. The protagonist notices that the attacks are clumsy, but ignores it, and tells his sister to prepare for the next phase. The young woman then notices that the wooden barrier is about to break and becomes very worried about the dangerous situation. Suddenly, the fortress shatters into several pieces from the force of the boss, who doesn't stop attacking the group there. With the impact of the explosion, the young tank is thrown far away and screams in pain from the damage he suffered. In that instant, the guy tells his sister, Mayu, to use her power to heal the injured ally who is down on the ground. With the healing, he gets up quickly and creates the fortress again, showing he has much more grit than it seemed. The live stream master says the plan is to repeat this, and that the fight should last about 4 hours at this pace. He finds the battle too boring to show on the stream and decides to end the broadcast, so he can fight seriously. One of the redheads is impressed with the perfect teamwork, but also feels completely exhausted. She thinks that despite the extreme fatigue, the fight is being very fun for all the team members. With that, the girl says it's time to aim for the boss's vital points, as it glares at them with a look of fury. Suddenly, the hero turns to one of the girls, who asks in fear what he is doing at that moment. He then draws a small black knife that doesn't seem to have anything special about it, to the surprise of all his allies. With the weapon in hand, the guy charges forward with absurd speed towards the enormous boss of that dungeon. Meanwhile, the other twin jumps and attacks the monster's leg with a powerful kick to create an opening. With a confident smile on his face, the streamer prepares to execute his part of the risky plan in the arena. The boss then throws a devastating punch, but the protagonist faces it head-on without showing any fear. The creature's red boxing glove moves at high speed towards our hero's face, but to the creature's surprise, the young man manages to block the blow using only his small, thin black knife. At this, the monkey becomes furious, and with an aura of fire, it decides to focus all its attacks on the streamer. The enemy's eyes glow with an intense white light, showing that it is now taking the fight seriously. The monster then begins a sequence of swift punches, and the guy is caught in the middle of that massive attack. The redhead screams desperately, saying that if the streamer takes that punch head-on, he will certainly be eliminated. From a distance, we see the creature running at full speed towards the guy, who looks tiny next to that giant. At that moment, the creature's body is covered by a bluish aura, indicating that it has activated a special ability. Even with the imminent danger, the hero doesn't move and waits for the opponent's punch to get closer and closer. With a quick movement, he dodges the blow and takes advantage of the opening to get close to the enemy's chest. The guy then forcefully plunges his knife right into the middle of the monkey's chest, which can't even react to the attack. With the blade embedded, the two stand still in a close quarters combat in the middle of the large fighting arena. The girl is shocked and can't believe that a simple streamer can have so much strength and courage. She asks how he is so strong, and the young man explains that if you attack when the target breathes, the damage increases greatly. The girl scolds the hero for his reckless fighting, but he calmly says he knew he wouldn't be taken out in that battle. This makes the young woman angry, and she calls him an idiot for taking such a huge risk for no apparent reason in the arena. But the guy just scratches the back of his neck and says that they won in the end, and that's all that really matters now. With the boss defeated, we see the small black knife still stuck in the giant creature's muscular chest on the ground. Then the protagonist steps on the monster's body to pull out his weapon, which was stuck in there. With the victory, he levels up to level 34 and unlocks an achievement for clearing the entire dungeon. The achievement grants a seal that prevents monsters from attacking him, and also boosts all of his stats in the area. He then shows the stream the purple seal on his wrist and explains that he successfully completed the dungeon. With that, his barrier gains an attribute that nullifies level 60 attacks, and he receives 10 million diamonds. The streamer is shocked, with a huge smile on his face, seeing the absurd amount of diamonds he just won. But the system announces that a 50% fee will be deducted, and he is devastated by the bad news. Looking at his allies, he thinks he should pay them a participation fee for their help in the battle. So the guy opens a menu and decides he'll share just 10% of the total amount with the rest of the group. The system calculates that each of the 4 team members will receive 250,000 diamonds as a reward. He does the math and realizes he'll be left with 4 million, and after cashing it all out, he'll have about 3 million. Even with the reduced amount, he thinks it's a lot of money, and one of the twins approaches to talk to him. The girl, with dollar signs in her eyes and money flying around her, says she really wants to party up with him again. She explains that having a brain in charge made her fight much better than usual, and it was a great feeling. The other sister agrees but says she doesn't feel like she did enough to deserve all the money she received. At this, the more talkative redhead tells the other to speak up, and the hooded girl is left speechless. With that, the more talkative redhead asks to keep in touch, but the guy finds her approach pretty scary. With dollar signs in her eyes, she says she just wants to party up again, and that the experience was very profitable for her. The girl explains that having a brain in charge made her fight better, and that the feeling was just incredible. At this, the other sister agrees with the idea, but says she doesn't feel she did enough to deserve so much money. Then the bolder redhead tells the other to speak her mind, and the hooded girl doesn't know how to react. Blushing, the girl asks for the guy's contact info, but says it's not because she likes him, but so they can play together again. The two then say their goodbyes and ask him to call the next time he's going to play, waving to the group. Suddenly, his sister appears and asks if it's okay for them to take 500,000 diamonds as a reward. The hero confirms and explains that the system added an extra zero, which is why everyone had a goofy smile. Out on the street, the young woman asks what they're going to eat, and the guy gets ready to pick a good place for dinner. But the girl crosses her arms, uninterested, and says she doesn't care what they eat that night. Her brother gets annoyed and reminds her that she was all excited about the money, but now she's acting completely indifferent. Then the girl's mood changes, and with a hungry look, she suggests a steakhouse with a great flan that she knows. At the restaurant, she thinks about how she never imagined earning so much money just by playing games with her older brother. Then, the young woman curiously asks how much he earned in total from the mission they just completed. He replies that it was the same as she got, and the girl says that was a lot, and that he can give her less next time. With a smile, he thinks to himself that it was already the minimum share, but he agrees to give her less just to make her happy in that moment. When the flan arrives, the girl gets super excited, and her brother asks if she really likes the dessert that much. But before she can answer, a voice shouts for everyone to get on the ground, and a bright light appears at the entrance. The guy gets annoyed and thinks to himself that it's players again, as he calmly eats his flan in the middle of the chaos. Storming the place, a group of thugs yells for everyone to get on the floor and not move. Our hero isn't fazed at all and thinks the situation is just like what happened at the police station a while back. The big guy then notices the young man is still eating and figures he's just a low-level player. With that, the protagonist asks why he should lie down, and the bully gets really mad at his audacity. The henchman says he was ordered to get rid of anyone who didn't follow his command there. Hiding under the table, the hero's sister is terrified and can't believe her brother's attitude. She then thinks the young man is a dangerous player, and that it would have been better if they had just obeyed. But the protagonist remains seated in his chair with a look of complete calm on his face. At that, the big guy approaches him and asks if he has a problem with the orders that were given. With a scornful look, he points at the young man's shirt and says he's got a lot of nerve for a weakling. The bully then grabs the streamer's head and tells him to get on his knees before he gets upset. With a hand on his head, the young man thinks the brute is really loud and quite annoying. The thug squeezes even tighter, getting ready to finish our hero off right there. But with a swift move, the young man firmly grabs the attacker's wrist and stops him from continuing. The big guy is completely shocked by the speed and strength of the seemingly harmless young man. The brute then asks how he can move, but the young man says he has plenty of stamina left. At that moment, the hero activates his broadcast barrier, which glows with a strong blue energy around him. With the barrier active, he easily pushes the bully's hand away and gets up from his chair. The big guy is shocked, and the young man asks if he finally understands the real situation there. His sister wonders why those guys are trying to get rid of her brother so directly. With his face sweating, the thug is speechless and doesn't know how to react to our protagonist's power. He then yells for his henchman to take the guy out once, and for all to end the fight. Two men run towards the hero with iron pipes in their hands, ready to attack with everything they've got. One of them then leaps into the air and swings the pipe, aiming right for the young streamer's head. But the attack hits the energy barrier, and the weapon shatters into several pieces from the impact. With his weapon destroyed, the thug screams in pain while holding his hands, which were injured in the process. The other henchman is shocked and says, "No one has ever survived that attack before." With a serious look, the protagonist faces his enemies without moving a single inch from his spot. He then thinks that, since they aren't players, he can go hard on them without worrying about the consequences. The leader of the thugs is shocked to see his men being defeated so easily by the young man. With that, the protagonist wonders why those guys are trying to take him out in such a specific way. He then remembers the brute saying the order was to get rid of anyone who didn't obey on sight. Thinking for a moment, he realizes it was all a trap and that he was the real target from the start. Suddenly, the blonde agent shows up and says some very interesting guys just appeared out of nowhere. He then apologizes and says the thugs were pointing in our hero's direction the whole time, but the young man tells him to stop pretending and says he's a terrible actor who can't fool anyone. The agent pretends to be offended, but the streamer asks what he gains by getting rid of him like that. Just then, the big guy gets up with a golden aura and says the young man will regret humiliating him. With a battle cry, the brute runs towards the protagonist for a final, desperate attack. The hero thinks that at his level, the enemy shouldn't be so reckless and take such a risk. Calmly, he gets up from his chair and prepares for the fight that's about to start in the restaurant. The bully yells that without the barrier, the young man is absolutely nothing and that the fight will end now. With a confident smile, the young man thinks that things have finally gotten a little more interesting there. The brute then throws a powerful punch, but our hero dodges the blow with great ease. Seizing the opportunity, the protagonist lands a full, force punch right in the middle of the enemy's stomach. The blow lands squarely, and the bully feels the full impact of that powerful attack on his large body. With a shocked expression, he can't believe the young man can have so much physical strength without using any skills. The hero then lands an uppercut on the enemy's chin and thinks that all he knows is how to use his rage skill. With that, he starts a sequence of fast and powerful blows on the brute's body, who doesn't react. To finish it off, he lands a strong kick to the big guy's face, sending him flying into the restaurant wall. The bully falls to the floor, defeated, and the protagonist approaches him with a very serious look on his face. Without wasting time, the young man pulls out his small black knife and prepares to question the fallen enemy. He then forcefully sticks the blade into the thug's shoulder, who screams in pain from the unexpected attack. Despite the screams, the hero holds him down and tells him to be quiet if he doesn't want things to get worse. With the knife in the guy's shoulder, he tells the brute to show him his phone immediately so he can see something. Trembling with fear, the big guy takes out his phone and hands it to the protagonist, who takes it calmly. Looking at the screen, the young man sees a contact saved as boss and realizes it was all a setup by the blonde agent. He then looks at the agent, who was trying to sneak away in the middle of all the confusion. With that, the hero calls him by his name and tells him to wait a minute because their conversation isn't over. The blonde man turns around, startled, and swears he didn't call anyone, but the young man says they can talk about it. With a smile, the young man tells them to talk and shows the thug's phone with the boss's contact saved. Zooming in on the screen, we see that the boss's number is the exact same as the blonde agent's phone number. With the proof in hand, the agent starts to sweat and realizes he's been completely found out by the streamer. The protagonist glares at him with a deadly look, and the man is terrified by the furious young man's expression. With nowhere to run, the blonde man is paralyzed with fear and doesn't know what to do in the tense situation. The young man then asks if the agent thinks he's some kind of idiot to fall for such an obvious plan. He explains that since the blonde guy was the one who hired the thugs, he'll have to pay for all the damages to the place. Just then, the bill for the restaurant's damages appears, and the total amount for the agent is 1 million yen. The man is shocked by the amount, but the hero tells him to stop playing dumb and pay the bill already. On top of that, he says the agent will also have to pay for all his medical costs from the commotion. The blonde man asks why he should pay the young man's medical expenses, and he says it's for the mental stress. Even with the explanation, the agent continues to refuse to pay our protagonist anything. With that, the young man asks if he needs help remembering what happened and gets closer to him. The young man then holds out his hand, and the agent understands he has no choice but to cooperate. With a sigh of defeat, the blonde man hands a card to the hero, who takes it with a satisfied smile. With a fake smile, the agent says he's a streamer and will give him some money for his time and effort. The hero's sister's face turns red and she yells at him while the young man just enjoys the situation. She then says she's going to take him out for all the embarrassment he caused her in front of everyone there. Back at home, the young man thinks the agent is a con artist, but that he can use him for his plans. With a confident smile, He realizes that since the blonde guy is a media specialist, he can take advantage of it. Later that night, he receives a notification on his phone and picks it up to see what happened. With a smile on his face, the young man sees that a large sum of money has been deposited into his account. Elsewhere, the blonde agent talks about a promising streamer he found who has a lot of potential. The hero then calls the agent and says he received the money, but that he's still going to ruin his life. On the phone screen, we see that the deposited amount was 2 million and that the plan worked perfectly. The next day, the young man goes to the blonde guy's agency and asks why he tricked him like that. With a fake smile, the man explains that the money was an advance and that he wants to hire him. He says that with his support, our hero can become the greatest streamer of all time on the server. In a meeting room, the agent officially invites him to join his talent agency, but sitting with other candidates, the protagonist seems completely uninterested in the man's proposal. He remembers when his sister was in a hospital bed, and he couldn't do anything to save her. With a sad look, he says the scenery is nice, but it doesn't belong to him, and he can't get distracted. The young man recalls the sound of the medical monitor and the exact moment his younger sister passed away in the past. He remembers receiving the diagnosis and how hopeless he felt upon learning of her rare disease. At that time, he was in a high-tech hospital, but even that wasn't enough to save her. Then he finds a boy who says his younger sister has the same symptoms and that he's desperate. The boy comforts his sick sister and says the treatment at that hospital is the only hope they have. In a simple room, the girl says the hospital room is very plain and she wished for something more cheerful. Lying in bed, she looks very weak and without any energy to keep fighting the illness. With a faint smile, she asks her older brother not to worry so much about her and to live his own life. The hero remembers those words and how helpless he felt for not being able to help the girl at the time. With her last bit of strength, the young woman says that if he ever gets a chance to save someone, he shouldn't hesitate to help. Back in the present, he thinks that now he has the power to change fate and that he won't fail again. Just then, his sister calls him, and he realizes she's okay and that the future he knew has already been changed. With a smile, the young woman thanks him for coming back and says that now she has a new chance to live happily. Back at home, the young man keeps thinking about how the future has changed and what he needs to do next. Eating chips? His sister asks if he wants some, but he's too focused on his plans. She then kicks his chair, and the young man gives her a serious look for her attitude. The young woman complains that he's ignoring her, and he says he needs to have a serious talk with her right now. He tells her that she has also awakened her powers, and because of that, she needs to start training to get strong. With that, he points at her and warns that the training will be tough, but that it's for her own good in the future. The girl is confused by his seriousness, but the young man opens her status screen to show her potential. He analyzes the blood priest class and says she needs 3 skills to get stronger. The young man explains that she has great attack potential, but also needs a good defense to fight. He then remembers how she was taken out in the past for being weak and promises it won't happen again. With that, the young woman clenches her fists and says she's ready to start training with her older brother. The young man then points to his own head and says that with his knowledge, she will level up very quickly. The young woman points back at him and says she's only doing this because he seems a little more reliable now. Embarrassed, she says it's not like she likes him or anything and looks away. Then she grabs her backpack and says she's ready to start the intensive training with her brother. Elsewhere, a mysterious woman talks about an extremely talented streamer who appeared out of nowhere. Meanwhile, our hero turns down the agent's offer and says he'd rather keep working alone for now. With a smile, he explains that he doesn't need any agency to get famous and that he's a lone wolf. Later at the police station, Agent Joseph tells a detective about the streamer who humiliated him at the restaurant. A blonde man in sunglasses overhears the story and seems very interested in the potential of this new player. He then remembers an incident with a bronze golem that caused massive destruction throughout the entire city. On that day, the monster appeared out of nowhere, and a girl was seriously injured during the surprise attack. The creature then captured the young woman, and our hero couldn't do anything to prevent the tragedy that occurred. He and his friend Sauda could only watch from a distance as the golem took the girl to an unknown location. Back in the present, a man in a blue uniform calls him for a serious talk about a new system mission. He explains that a giant stone monster has appeared and that the young man has been chosen to defeat the creature. The hero receives a call and is shocked to find out that he is the only one who can stop this new threat. The officer says the system chose him because of his great potential and his unique combat skills. He then warns that the fate of the world is now in our protagonist's hands and that he cannot fail. With that, the man in sunglasses analyzes the streamer's data and realizes he's much more than he appears to be. Analyzing the data, the man in glasses sees the job title of maintenance manager and is very intrigued by it. He wonders how a player with such a common class can be so powerful and seem like a god. With that, he tells his teammate that they need to keep an eye on that streamer at all costs. With a smile, he thinks he has finally found an interesting player to watch and that the fun is about to begin. Elsewhere, Agent Joseph warns his boss that the young man is a dangerous player and they should be careful. He recalls that in the past, the streamer had his entire team wiped out during a raid on a difficult dungeon. With that, the head of the agency agrees and says they need to monitor every step of that mysterious player. Looking up at the blue sky, the hero thinks that his life has suddenly become much more complicated than he expected. He then remembers the bronze golem from the tutorial and how powerful and hard to defeat the creature was. The system rewards him with a high-quality mana crystal for successfully completing the dungeon. With the red crystal in his hand, he thinks he can use that item to increase his power even more. Suddenly, the man in sunglasses appears and says he didn't expect to meet him again so soon in that place. He then extends his hand and formally introduces himself as a government agent to our protagonist. Sitting in his chair, the streamer looks at him with an expression of complete disinterest and doesn't return the greeting. Despite being ignored, the man in sunglasses keeps his hand extended, waiting for a handshake from the young man. Surrounded by bronze golems, the hero faces the situation and seems quite calm about the imminent danger. Suddenly, the gem on one of the monster's chests begins to glow with a very intense red light. With that, all the other golems that were standing still in the room also begin to move slowly. Looking at his hand, the young man thinks he has no choice and will have to use his trump card to win. He then activates the power of the mana crystal, which glows with a strong red energy in his hands. With a confident smile on his face, he prepares to attack the first golem in his path. At that moment, the protagonist dashes forward with speed and lands a powerful blow right in the middle of the monster's chest. With the impact of the attack, the mana crystal in his hand begins to crack and glow even brighter. With the crystal embedded in the enemy, he says this is the perfect moment to test his new skill. The item's energy then expands and creates a huge crack in the chest of the bronze creature. With a powerful kick, he finishes the combo and sends the golem flying with the force of his attack. The impact is so strong that the mana crystal shatters into several pieces, and the golem begins to fall. The system then announces that the bronze golem has been defeated, and the young man seems quite annoyed with the situation. With his hand on his head, he complains that he didn't want to have to use that item so early on his journey. Seeing the defeated creature, he thinks that now he needs to find a way to get out of that place. Sitting on top of the defeated golem, he wonders how such an expensive item broke with a single use. Just then, the system announces that he has obtained a fragment and a piece of bronze as a reward for his victory. Beside him, young Saudo is lying on the ground, and the hero wonders if he's okay after the fight. Suddenly, his sister Mayu appears and asks if he's all right, saying she was very worried about him. With a smile, she says she knew he could do it, and the young man gets flustered by his sister's praise. With a serious look, he tells Sada not to mess with him anymore, and the boy is frightened by the warning. He then tells the newbie that he was lucky not to have been taken out because of his recklessness. Sauder explains he just wanted to help, but the hero ignores him and continues his lecture about the mission's danger. At that, He sits down and says that because of the boy, his mana crystal was destroyed, and he lost money. The veteran then stares at him with a serious look, and the boy is left not knowing how to respond to the accusation. He says he's teaching the newbie a lesson, and that next time, he won't be so lucky. With his face sweating, the hero thinks he needs a sponsor, so he won't have to worry about money anymore. He then asks if Sauda has finally learned his lesson, and the young man nods his head in silence. With that, he gets up and says that since the boy understands, they can continue the mission together now. But the young man warns that if Sauda messes up again, he will take him out himself without a second thought. The newbie is shocked, and the hero grabs him firmly, reminding him that his life is in his hands now. He explains that a player was taken out by a golem, and that this isn't a game for kids like him. Just then, we see another player being completely crushed by the strength of one of the dungeon's golems. The young man then throws an item to Soda and tells him to hit the monster one more time to finish the fight. With the item in hand, the boy prepares for the final attack, and the veteran just watches the scene from a distance. He then turns to the body of the fallen player and thinks that this is the harsh reality of the new world. With a sigh, he says they can't make any more mistakes, and that the next phase will be even harder. With that, the system announces that the dungeon has been cleared, and that the team completed it on the first try. The hero explains that the area's boss was the bronze golem, and that they are safe for now. Then, a bright light emerges from the body of one of the monsters, and the system announces that a secret piece has been found. A huge golem falls to the ground, and the young man wonders what on earth that unexpected reward from the system is. The secret piece is the Golem Slayer creation set, and he gets excited about the new item he obtained. With the item in hand, he realizes he can craft powerful gear to face stone monsters. He explains to Sauda that the set could be the key to unlocking a new secret floor in the dungeon. But the hero says they need more materials, and that the next mission will be to find these rare items. On a panel, we see that Minato Mirai Station has been occupied, and that a portal has appeared in the middle of the city. Just then, Agent Joseph appears and says they can sell any items they want at the new trading station. He explains that a new economy has been created, and that players can now freely trade items among themselves. Sitting in a chair, he talks about the new player rights, and how this will change the game forever. With an evil smile, he says that now the life and death of players are in the hands of people like him. In his room, the hero watches a live stream by Egan Paul and realizes the agent is behind all of this. He sees that the famous streamer is promoting the new trading station and that it's part of a bigger plan. With that, the young man decides he will use the situation to his advantage and create an opportunity for himself. He then opens the stream window and prepares to expose the whole truth about Agent Joseph to the public. Suddenly, the system announces that he has activated an achievement for clearing the dungeon on his first attempt. With this, a permanent defense buff is applied to all players who enter that dungeon from now on. The hero wonders what that achievement is and why he received such a strange reward from the system. A golem then appears in front of him, and he gets ready to test his new permanent defense skill. With that, a bluish barrier appears around his body, and he easily blocks the monster's punch. With a satisfied smile, he thinks that things are about to get much more interesting for him in the game.